Namaskar everyone. A warm welcome to Krishi Gyandeep Knowledge Lecture Series being conducted on 10th May 2023, series number 23. Manage organizes Krishi Gyandeep Knowledge Lecture Series by inviting eminent persons from varied field of agriculture and development sectors to motivate and inspire the professionals. And here we invite outstanding personalities to manage to share their knowledge essence and lifetime experiences through live lectures to faculty members, participants of training programs, students and invitees from the leading institutions and also networks. These lectures are recorded as video films to share through Manage YouTube and social media to reach larger audience. These series are reaching more than 1 lakh extension professionals not only within India and also abroad, which includes officers of state departments of agriculture and allied sectors, faculty members of state agriculture universities, samitis, EIs, scientists of KVKs, agripreneurs, NGOs, and public at large, so that we are able to reach last mile extension worker to learn and use these experiences wherever they require. This is the basic concept of Manage Krishi Gyandeep Knowledge Lecture Series. We are very privileged to invite Honorable Dr. Lalita Bhattacharya, Senior Nutrition Advisor, Retiree of Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO. And today's topic is Nutrition Sense to Agriculture. Welcome you, ma'am. Welcome you to this Krishi Gyandeep Knowledge Lecture Series. Now,
thank you.
The Director General Manage, Dr. P. Chandrasekharaji, to welcome and introduce today's eminent personality, Dr. Lalita Bhattacharya.
Thank you, Dr. Renuka. Namaskar to everyone, all the managed faculty, staff, and other facilitators participating from outside Manage online. Namaskar and welcome on behalf of Manage family. It is my privilege to welcome Dr. Lalita Bhattacharya, Senior Nutrition Advisor, Food and Agriculture Organization, to deliver a talk under Krishi Gyandeep Knowledge Lecture Series on Nutrition Sensitive Agriculture. The very purpose of Krishi Gyandeep Knowledge Lecture Series, as told by Dr. Renuka, is to link global thinking to local action. So whatever new technologies, new experiences, innovations which are taking place in different parts of the world, that should reach the last mile extension worker who is serving farmers in the village. Except arrangement like Krishi Gyandeep Knowledge Lecture Series, we don't have many options for grassroots level extension worker to access the rich experience which is available at global level. So this recording is converted into a beautiful film and it is reached to more than 1 lakh different stakeholders working with Manage. So for this important program, I would like to thank again Dr. Lalita Bhattacharya for accepting our invitation and participating in this Krishi Gyandeep Knowledge Lecture Series. And I will take a little time to introduce very illustrious professional background of Dr. Lalita Bhattacharya. She is serving as Senior Nutrition Advisor, Food and Agriculture Organization. And she is basically a professional in nutrition and public health, FAO, and many other international organizations for more than 4.5 decades, not a small time, 4.5 decades. And she has immense contribution in the field of planning and application of food-based nutrition in development subsequent to her joining to FAO since 2000, and also provided technical support to field programs in nutrition policies, nutrition capacity strengthening, training and community-based nutrition sensitive strategies in Bangladesh, India, Laos, Sri Lanka, and Thailand from 2001 to 2006. Apart from providing services in policy making and program planning, she has rendered her service as Associate Professor of SNDT, Women's University, Mumbai, during 92 to 98. During this time, she guided 20 MSc students, 2 PhD students, and more than 100 postgraduate diploma students in dietetics and sports nutrition. Recognizing her professional contribution, she has been awarded DR Sen Award 2014 by FAO for her outstanding contribution to the advancement of countries. She has been awarded PhD degree from Srimati Nathibai Damodar Thackeray Women's University, Mumbai during the year 1990. During the past 4.5 decades, she served several multinational intergovernmental organizations such as European Union, IFAD, USAID, UNICEF, WHO, World Food Program, GAIN and World Bank, and many other organizations. Welcome to Dr. Lalita Bhattacharjee, and over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Chandra. You have been very kind. I'm speaking to an enlightened audience as well. Yes, the journey in nutrition has been quite long. It started since 1977, as you said, in academia, and from 2000 with FAO largely. And now I'm a retired advisor, and I contribute to different organizations, with FAO being one of the main agencies, my parent institution. Good morning, good afternoon, all friends from Telangana and from India. The Director General, Dr. Chandra, Deputy Director, Dr. Rani, Senior Agriculture Extension colleagues, and friends from the Nutrition and Agriculture fraternity. Thank you for inviting me to this Manage Krishi Gyandeep Knowledge Lecture Series. I'm indeed honored. I will be largely taking you through some of the experiences of integrating nutrition within agriculture extension, and I will share with you some of the lessons learned from selected Asian countries. Now, in 2014, late 2014, at the ICN2, countries had committed to enhance and improve their food systems, wherein they had committed to enhance sustainable food systems by developing nutrition-sensitive policies, which strengthened the production to plate approach, as we can say, across multiple sectors, so that we could improve access to meet people's nutritional needs. In order to promote safe and diversified healthy diets. We've been hearing this across the last decade quite a bit, okay? Now, however, this is not so simple and so easy. And as you are fully aware, people from the agriculture sector, we need to look at some of these important components. And today I would take the opportunity to share with you the regional food and nutrition situation, moving away to nutrition-sensitive food systems, some policy tools for healthy diets, largely the food composition tables and the dietary guidelines, then dietary diversity, how important it is, and some evidence of contributions to improved nutritional status. This is the brief outline. Now, let me begin with some macro information, which we look at food groups as a percentage of dietary energy supplies in selected Asian countries. Now, most of you may be aware, and this is being done across the countries. FAO has a system known as the food balance sheets, where we monitor on an aggregate level the dietary energy supplies. The dietary energy supplies really is a metric which looks at a country's food supply and kind of monitors whether there is enough dietary energy to meet aggregate population needs for energy. It also gives you an estimate of calories from non-staples or non-cereals, as you can see in this particular figure. Now, what does this figure really tell you? You can see that there are food groups on the right side, and the bars tell you, the blue bar really signifies largely the cereal component of energy. And the other food groups, as you can see, sugars, pulses, oils, fruits, vegetables, the whole group of large food groups. So basically, the message from this is that it provides an estimate of calories from non-cereal foods, which are indicative of production diversification. And the limitation of this particular indicator does not reflect energy consumption, but energy available for consumption, or food dietary energy supply for consumption. However, when the contribution of cereals to energy is reduced and non-cereals is improved, then that signifies a little bit about the production diversity. And as you can see in the case of some selected countries, Bangladesh has the largest contribution of energy from cereals, followed by Nepal, 55 from India, which is quite good, which talks about the diversification policies and the improvement of contribution of other sectors like horticulture, fisheries, livestock. And you have a whole range of countries. Lao PDR has made progress. However, this graph can be misleading. It doesn't necessarily mean that all this is available for consumption at the household or individual level. And we will talk about this as we go along. Now we come to the nutrition situation of countries in the region, selected countries, and I will focus on SAARC countries mainly. On the whole, when you look at the latest state of the SOFI report, or the state of food and nutrition security in the region, Asia Pacific region, about 1/4 of the children in Asia Pacific are found to be still stunted, that is, having low height for age. Now, and as we are all aware, stunting is the effect of chronic malnutrition on child growth, with negative consequences for health and development. We are aware of this, and it's an important indicator of the development of a country. Now, countries with high stunting are largely found in South Asia, as we are aware. And here again, as you can see from the bars, the blue bar is wasting and the red bar is stunting. Countries like Afghanistan, Bangladesh to some extent, yes, Bhutan is better. India stands at about 30%, 31, or I think the latest figures may be a little lower, but this is what we have from the latest 2022. Maldives is lower. Nepal has had some improvement. Pakistan is high. Sri Lanka has made progress. The data shows us that Bangladesh, Bhutan, Maldives, and Sri Lanka seem to be doing well. And while the other countries are still need to accelerate their rate of stunting reduction. Similarly, wasting, which is malnutrition, where children are most vulnerable due to factors arising from household food insecurity, shocks, disasters, they can also negatively affect child growth as well as malnutrition. Now, and this negatively affects health. Countries today have drawn up, as part of the World Health Assembly goals, countries have drawn up global action plan strategies and frameworks to prevent and reduce wasting, which is an important also with the implications for child mortality. So India, as you can see over here, it's almost 17.3%, which are all issues of public health concern, and actions are being made to control this, to prevent and control. Next, we come to, along with underweight or undernutrition, as we call it, we also come to childhood obesity, which is another emerging problem alongside undernutrition. And this is a concern across the world, and Asia is no exception. Childhood obesity, as we are aware, is rising globally, and this is mainly driven by reduced or insufficient physical activity and increased availability and consumption of highly processed foods. And these foods are often high in sugar, salt, and fat. And if you look at it, we find in the last, from 2020, there has been an regional increase from 4.2% to 5% childhood obesity, which is of concern. But basically, we find that if you look at the prevalence of obesity, let's take the case of India, it's 1.9%. And you can see Bhutan, which is quite high, although improvement has been made in undernutrition. So you can see that it is somewhere between 2 to about 5% roughly. That is childhood obesity, which is definitely a point for concern. Then we come to anemia. Now, anemia in SAARC countries remains a major public health problem. Across the board, you can see somewhere between 35 to 50 odd percent. And across the region, as we do know, globally, we say about 1/3 of them are affected by anemia. And across the region, it is somewhere between 47% for non-pregnant women and 52% for pregnant women, which these are all high numbers. Now, the cause of anemia that we are aware of definitely is persistent menstrual losses, which is in the case of reproductive age 14 to 49 years. Then the demands of repeated childbearing and pregnancies. Now, poor diet. Under poor diet, I would like to highlight when we say faulty diet, it includes poor consumption of animal source foods in some cases where animal source foods are taken, also iron-rich foods, protein-rich foods, as well as vitamin C and folic acid-rich foods. Which are these foods? We'll talk about as we go along. Poor hygiene, parasitic infestation, as well as access to toilets and other important factors. Now, women, interestingly, the results where Nepal is slightly better, the evidence shows that in the case of Nepal, which is an lower income agrarian based country, the eating patterns appear to be similar across the country, where most Nepalis eat iron rich staples regardless of their wealth status. So I think there is something to do with the changes and the kind of food combinations that we have, as well as the enhancers and stimulators which may promote iron absorption. And we can talk about this as we go along. Now we quickly come to the framework, the agriculture, health, nutrition framework that we are aware of. And this has become very important as a guideline or framework across the world. And there has been a lot of progress in India. So I think this is something familiar to you. We all understand that malnutrition is multi-sectoral. It also shows that there is a complex interplay of different factors working between the agri-health and environmental systems that determine the access to services, resources, and the related planning processes. Now, what does this chart really tell you? This has been adapted from the well-known UNICEF framework of the 1990s, the conceptual framework, which highlights the drivers of nutritional status. That is, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, these drivers of nutritional status. Basically, it tells us that at different levels, you can see over here at the political level, then we have at the household level and at the individual level, you can see how all these enabling factors contribute to, they lead to improved fetal and child nutrition and developmental outcomes. So malnutrition is viewed as, when we look at this entire thing, we have two blocks on the either side, as you can see. In 2013, in the Lancet series, they had divided interventions into nutrition-specific interventions and nutrition-sensitive interventions. And this is where the role of agriculture is found to be critical. I'm saying something that you already know, but we might have to spend a little time just quickly highlighting the important things. So under nutrition-sensitive agricultural interventions, or other nutrition-sensitive entry points, as we call it, they serve as an entry point for implementing nutrition-specific interventions. Under nutrition-sensitive interventions, we have agriculture, we have social protection, we have childhood development programs, several of these, education, water, sanitation, health, and family planning. And then all this is supported by an enabling environment, and all these converge into these different components, where we have food security, 3-4 components: availability, access, stability, as well as the utilization. We have caregiving, feeding, we have access to health and related services, hygiene services, breastfeeding, and complementary feeding. This is a very important component which directly impacts child growth and stunting, where if the maternal diet is poor, if there is poor infant and young child feeding, poor sanitation, this can directly impact not only the child's health, but even the fetal outcome in terms of low birth weight. When the mother is malnourished, this can affect the child. So the first 1,000 days of life are critical when we talk about nutrition. Then we have nutrition-specific interventions. I will not read this out to you. You will have the slides. You can take a good look. But the Lancet series has shown that almost 3/4 of the answer to addressing malnutrition lies beyond the realm of the health sector. So you can understand how important agriculture is as an important engine, not only of growth, but in terms of contributing to nutrition. Here is again a classical framework, which nutrition-sensitive food systems, which help to ensure access to and promote consumption of a healthy diet, taking into consideration other causes of malnutrition. Now, we have selected over here 5 pillars, one which includes diversified and sustainable agriculture of healthy diets. Then we have efficient and nutrition-sensitive post-harvest transformation, which you are aware of, value addition. Then we have improved diets, consumption, nutrition education, which is embedded into the entire system. Then we have social protection and improving resilience, especially with reference to disasters, natural calamities, man-made disasters, and several situations where our displaced populations, not only developing world, across the world, and an enabling environment where issues of gender, food safety cuts across all, and other essential programs, monitoring, evaluation, which are essential for achieving food and nutrition security. So the main ones we see over here is food production, diversified production for healthy diets, where we have different policy tools, the dietary guidelines, which not only guide you to enhance, to demand a healthy food supply, but also inform the agriculture sector to not only enhance diversified production, but they should have nutrient-related targets. Then we have food handling, storage, processing, which is the part of access, transformation, linking it to market, eventually to trade and marketing. Here we have important nutritional issues like food labeling, nutrient information of the food, not having false claims about the foods that are being produced and which are available in the market. And ultimately, the consumer demand, wherein dietary guidelines enhance or rather educate the consumer to be able to make wise food choices, healthy food selection, and preparation of the food, which is very, very important, which often we ignore. And how can this be more within the traditional context, cultural preferences, which helps you to meet the diet? Now, these are all guided by the dietary guidelines and the recommended dietary allowances or the nutrient requirements. India has gone way ahead and have produced the recommended dietary allowances in 2020, which has been, you could say, almost like a benchmark for the region. And there are lots of revisions being made, which is important for us, where energy requirements have been revisited. Possibly we are taking extra calories which may not be needed. So the NIN has produced this in collaboration with other partners, and this has been used as an important reference point. Now I will come to the challenge, which is just something what you already know. We really need to bridge or narrow the nutrition gap. That is what is available and what is needed for a healthy diet. So it's important that our programs, our field level interventions, extension programs, we have explicit nutrition goals which are integrated. And we can talk about this. There are lots of experience and lessons. We'll be talking about it. And as I mentioned, food composition tables, which give you, India has again produced updated its food composition tables. I think this was done in the year 2018 or 2017, which is across the country with such a wide plethora of foods across the region and different regional diversities. Monitoring and evaluation mechanisms which are embedded into programming. This is important. It could be at a countrywide level, it could be statewide level, but this is essential not only at the national level, but at subnational levels. And how does this give rise to essential dietary and nutrition outcomes? Capacities for nutrition in agriculture, cross-sectoral expertise is needed. It's not just nutrition in isolation, but linked with agriculture, gender, women's empowerment, food safety, and other related disciplines. So we need to have an ownership and support for nutrition in agriculture. Not just talking about nutrition isolation, which is often a mistake that nutritionists make. And therefore, we tend to isolate it and we are not able to see the real picture when we look at the macro and the micro level. FAO has provided some recommendations. Some of it I have already mentioned. But apart from having explicit nutrition objectives to track and to mitigate the potential harms, apart from nutrition outcomes, we also collaborate with other sectors, empower women, facilitate production diversification, and processing, storage, preservation in order to not only retain the nutritional value and food safety or conserve nutrient losses, also with reference to seasonality, reduce post-harvest losses, and have healthy foods which can be easy to prepare. Market access, especially at the rural level, household level, I know a lot of change has happened in India, but this is something that we need to keep strengthening and reiterating so that there will be across the board, the rural people, the more disadvantaged, all of them can have access to a healthy diet, which is where we have the problem. And incorporate or integrate nutrition promotion and nutrition education. This is something where we have to hammer hard and make sure that this is not only a domain of the health sector or social welfare, but all sectors, and in this case, certainly agriculture. These are some policy tools. I'm only showing you the ones in Bangladesh, but we have countries across the region where FAO has played a critical role, where you have updated dietary guidelines, you have food composition tables. Dietary guidelines, while we are all aware and we have them, I think they are not very seriously used as a tool in food planning, agriculture planning. And this is something that we need to have dialogue discussions with the agriculture sectors. And we can talk about it when we have our discussion. Not only dietary guidelines for an average person, sedentary, moderate, heavy workers across the board, but also complementary feeding guidelines, which are very essential. And today we look at issues of nutrient density, not just that you start giving at 6 months these foods. So nutrient density of foods, that is what is the return for the money spent and what is the contribution of nutrients per 100 calories. These are very scientific and specific methodologies which can be made simple when we do food planning, food combinations, and when we plan and prepare our meals. Okay, now the cost and affordability of diets. Well, recently work has been done in FAO and several agencies are looking at this, where the increased cost and affordability of the healthy diet, where we find nearly 44% of the population in Asia Pacific region are not able to afford a healthy diet. Roughly now the cost that they worked out is about $4 per day for a diet. And between 2019 and 2020, we find that there has been a highest surge in the cost of the diet. So I think issues of pricing policy, certainly, but apart from that, economic factors, the ability to plan that healthy diet, this is where there is a challenge. So people tend to focus more on the staples. However, there are several foods, and when we look at the traditional diet, how do we try and reduce the intake of staples and try to have non-staple foods? These are issues under food planning that we need to look at when we look at a healthy diet. It's not so simple, but there is an important concept that I would like to share with you. And you can take a look at this slide, which says Eastern Asia is better as compared to Southeast Asia. And Southern Asia, almost 70% are unable to afford a healthy diet, according to the country. So this is some useful statistics, and we would like to refer to it as we go along with the comparative analysis, and when you are trying to look at the data, which is important to let you know. Now, I would like to take a minute to explain this slide, which is an important one. This was some work that we had done using Bangladesh as an example, but other countries have also been doing it, and work is going on in this case. So you may be aware of this term, many of you are aware, nutrient density. Basically, it is a measure of nutrients provided for the 100 calories of the food. Okay, so it is, you could say, the return, the nutrient return for the calories of that particular food. And nutrient density is actually calculated for some key nutrients. These are micronutrients largely, and the important micronutrients which are deficient in the diet. So these include calcium, iron, vitamin A, and folic acid, important micronutrients which have got marked influence on blood building, skeletal growth, and several important immunity functions. And our diet is often lacking in these micronutrients. So this is an important function that we need to look at. Now, if you look at, we've divided this into 4 quadrants, as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yes, approximately. You will see that cereals, oil, sugar, edible oils, these mostly provide energy, but not nutrients. And on the other hand, when we look at foods like, say, lentils, eggs, fruits, condiments and spices also in the Asian diet, where we do consume quite a bit of spices and condiments, milk, leafy vegetables, other vegetables, you can see, and this has been mapped in a certain way, which on the left side you have the nutrient returns for 100 calories, and below you have the energy cost per 100 calories, okay? So here you can see on the left side, the comparative analysis shows us that vegetables, fruits, and animal source foods includes milk. We also have fish over here, meat on the right corner. It is at the medium, it's not on the top, okay? So you can just see this, which give us micronutrients, certainly. They give us energy and some protein in the case of animal source foods. Now, the comparative analysis across these foods show us that habitual diets, which are generally consumed, generally energy dense and nutrient poor. And across countries, when you look at the desirable dietary pattern, like India also has produced desirable dietary patterns for food planning, for your food budgets. At that level, we find that diets should be less energy dense and more nutrient dense. Let me make this a little more clear. Rice, wheat, cereals, all these are relatively cheaper and they supply less of the key micronutrients that I mentioned compared to lentils, pulses, leafy vegetables on the top, other vegetables, yellow, orange vegetables, fruits over here, eggs and milk. Now the left side, which is the cost, which shows the cost over here, as you can see below. Yes, leafy vegetables would be cheaper, but they would give you the return in terms of better nutrients, whereas possibly meat, which is more expensive, will, for that cost, you are getting nutrients, but you would rather go in for other foods which are relatively cheaper and are packed with nutrients. So this is an important mapping which tells you how do we look and make a selection of foods. So the bottom line is that as diets become increasingly energy dense, people also, that is over here, that is this group, plus above the meat-rich foods, they become energy dense. People also consume voluminous amounts of diet, and while they may cover your energy needs, they are often in excess, and these have implications for overweight and obesity and other related conditions. So the bottom line message is, let us try to reduce the consumption of staples, cereals, and add more of lentils, vegetables, and the affordable local fruits, and eggs and milk in the case of lacto-ovo-vegetarians, and fish in the case of those who consume it. So this is a useful mapping, and there are details of information on this. This is a chart which tells you about the sales of ultra-processed food and drink per capita. Again, you can see Southern Asia, Southeastern Asia, and other countries, Pacific Islands, between 2007 and 2021, where for India it was 128.6% in 2007, and it has increased, it has boomed to 160%, and you can see other countries as well. So with urbanization, these are things which are happening with consumption of diets, with transition and several reasons, but I thought this was a useful slide for us to see. Now I want to take a few minutes to talk about dietary diversity, which is an important component. It is a qualitative measure of food consumption which reflects household access, certainly, but also the intake of a range of foods. So it is more a proxy, you can say, for micronutrient adequacy. It is not individual consumption per se, but it gives you a sense of adequacy. And this is being used as a tool in agriculture programs to quickly check whether the community, the households at an individual level are taking an adequate variety of micronutrient-rich foods. So it helps to inform nutrition-sensitive planning. We need individual food consumption intake, and especially of certain target groups, the first 1,000 days of life, right from conception, lactation, up to 2 years of age for the child. There's a confusion. Economists look at what people buy, nutritionists look at what people eat. I think we have to look at both, and the focus should be on enhancing the variety and the diversity. We have divided the groups into cereals, roots and tubers, legumes, nuts, oil seeds. Animal source foods include milk and milk products, eggs, fish and flesh foods. Vegetables and fruits are important. We divide them into vitamin A rich vegetables and fruits, that is green leafy vegetables, and yellow orange vegetables. Potatoes are not included in this category unless it is an orange flesh sweet potato. Sugars, jaggery, fats and oils, these are not always considered when we look at the dietary diversity. But yes, in the case of molasses, depending on the processing, you may get some amount of minerals. But otherwise, they help you mainly as a source of energy, to increase energy density. In the case of certain fats and oils, fortified ones, you also get essential fatty acids. They help you to fill the energy gap. But the focus would be on the total 10 food groups, and at least a minimum of 5 should be taken in a day. This is the main message. So this is the minimum dietary diversity for women, MDDW, which has been developed in 2014 by FAO in partnership with other agencies like USAID, UC Davis, the UEU and other partners, which is being used today as a tool across agriculture intervention programs. And I know India is also using it, where it is the proportion of women 15 to 49 years who have consumed food from at least 5 out of the 10 per day, at least 5 out of the 10. And those women who have a higher proportion of foods to have a higher level of micronutrient adequacy. So it's quite simple. For example, breakfast you've taken chapatis or bread or it's some cereal. So you get 1 mark. If you've repeated it in the afternoon, rice, dinner, roti, you would still get only 1 mark. But if you need to look at, have you taken the 5 groups, at least 5 out of 10. If you take more, excellent. So this is an important indicator. So you have the groups, cereals, pulses, nuts and seeds, very important, oil seeds. You have a very flourishing oil seed sector in India. Dairy, meat, poultry and fish, eggs, dark green leafy vegetables, yellow orange vegetables, other vegetables, that is gourds, lady's finger and several of them. Fruits, we have vitamin A rich fruits and we also have other fruits. So these are the 10 groups and we must take minimum 5 out of 10 in a day. Why do we choose this indicator? This is supposed to be, or rather it has been proved, there's evidence to show that it is a standardized, universally accepted indicator for individual-based nutrition. It gives you an indication of immediate changes in dietary quality and micronutrient adequacy. It's also easy and simple to collect in the field. It doesn't require a trained nutritionist. Yes, you need to have training, but once you've understood the principle and the concept, you can grade it and it can be done rapidly in the field. It's also cost effective, also non-labor intensive, and it can be integrated across multidisciplinary programs, health, social protection, agriculture, as well as education. Now, this plate is being updated, by the way, because now we are not only talking about half the proportion of your plate should be cereals, but it should be less than that. So basically, this plate tells you reduce the consumption of rice, in this case, to say half. The remaining half is divided into equal proportions of dal, lentil, leafy vegetable, that is in this case red amaranth, yellow orange vegetables and other vegetables, fish in this case, and some lemon. Now, in certain cultures, in this case in Bangladesh, fruits were not taken as part of the diet. So they did not put fruit. So you have 5 groups here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But it would be helpful to take local fruits in the diet after a meal. And these are important messages that are given through this. This was a typical healthy plate. Fill half the plate, eat a variety of foods. During pregnancy, eat a little extra and wash both your hands with soap and running water before eating food. Basic point I want to make here is that in the extension program, they had food-based nutrition training, which I think is not new to you. You are certainly doing these things. But just to give you the integration of agriculture and health, where we had modules under basics of food and nutrition, health hygiene, breastfeeding, complementary feeding, maternal nutrition, food hygiene, and processing and preservation on this side. Under preservation, some of the basic techniques and technologies, as we call it, to improve dietary diversity. You can see a range of methods. I know a lot of work is being done in India on this, blanching, roasting, and these. Then there are typical recipes. These are local to the country, and we can talk about this. So these were a component, the part of food-based nutrition training. In the case of extension workers, it could be a little more. For the sake of agricultural officials, it can be a 5-day trip, whatever. But this was the basic package. Now, the results of such programs showed that at the start and at the end of the intervention, in the case of lactating and pregnant women, there was an improvement in the women's dietary diversity from 3.7 to 4.9 and from 3.7 to 5.1, which is an impressive improvement in rural areas where people were resource poor individuals, pregnant women, 50,000 pregnant women, pregnant and lactating women. And this was found to be very, very useful purely with this integrated approach of agriculture and health. This was anemia, where at baseline it was 67.7, which reduced to 64 in a 3-year period. Stunting, wasting, and underweight also showing improvement. Underweight was more pronounced. Stunting takes time, but at least there was some marginal improvement. So also in the case of wasting. Now, these were some important pictures and, results from the field, which I just thought I will share with you, where the peels of fruits, citrus fruits can be used. They were candied and you added in preparations, broccoli, then in the case of cauliflower greens and some of these things, because the leaves, the underutilized parts of plants are also a good source of not only fiber, but also many micronutrients and phytonutrients, which are often neglected. Bottle gourd leaves, yard-long beans, which can be dried. Drumstick leaves, I don't have to tell all of us. We are aware of this. This has been used for a very long time, but somehow these are disappearing from our diet. So these not only serve as a natural fencing, but they are a good source of energy and a range of vital micronutrients. A new paradigm for agriculture. This is about biodiversity, and I will come talk to you briefly about millets. Before I go to millets, I want to tell you that we looked at a cohort of 12 countries across the world, and we found the message here is that from the Bill diet, although there were so many traditional foods and indigenous foods which were being grown and they are fast disappearing, 59% of the energy in the diet was from those traditional foods. In the case of Dalit, as low as 43%, although there were a storehouse of these indigenous and traditional foods which used to be produced and which is available in the local knowledge of the community. And Karen, 85% of the energy came from traditional foods, and these are the case of other countries, the traditional foods. Now, the point I'm trying to make is that the cultural practices, the traditional foods are fast disappearing, and when these are strengthened and being promoted, you will notice that even the disease profiles, which and the studies have shown that the prevalence of micronutrient deficiency is lower when these are being taken. In the older generations, it was much less, and we are losing this local knowledge. So the agriculture sector has an important role to play in terms of also protecting and promoting these traditional foods, underutilized foods, and indigenous local foods in the diet. Benefits of millets, I think we are aware of this, but I will just put it in front of you. Apart from giving you complex carbohydrates and protein, it is also a good source of B-complex vitamins such as folic acid, thiamine, riboflavin, and several micronutrients, minerals, and essential amino acids in the case, and the methionine, and also in the case of lecithin and other vitamins. And mostly these are gluten-free and they can be consumed. So these are millets, and I know this is the year of millets, International Year of Millets, and a lot of work is happening in India. This is the example of Swaminathan Foundation, where they have been promoting nutrition education across different agriculture, health, and social protection programs, looking at nutrient density of millets, and these are incorporated into social protection programs, expanding the food basket, and even the marketing and private sector is trying to use millets. So we need to have tools which can help in involving not only for consumption, but also involve the value chain actors, farmer organizations, and developmental projects, and also enhance it through media outreach. An example from Afghanistan, where capacity, this was not now, right now they're having a difficult time, but this was a little earlier, where integrating the nutrition as a part of capacity development of the Ministry of Agriculture, Irrigation and Livestock, and several entry points were found through joint action plans, and the women were involved through the ministry. And several local recipes were introduced, nutrition education and home-based food processing. As you can see, some of these centers have been established in the Agriculture Ministry and at the ground level. So this has been funded by the German government, but there was a lot of improvement that was, at least capacities were built. I will focus on the Cambodia experience, where they not only linked nutrition education for household nutrition, but for child feeding. And this was important. Normally, agriculture programs don't focus so much on child feeding and infant and young child feeding. So using the methodology of trials of improved practices, we looked at what was the factors that were affecting infant and young child feeding, and finding out those factors, recipes were developed, the complementary feeding guidelines were developed, and this was integrated along with nutrition education and the agricultural extension services. So, and behavior change over that 3-year period. And we found that there was improved breastfeeding practices, also with other agencies, Alive and Thrive, and as you can see, there was improvement in minimum acceptable diet, the minimum dietary diversity of women, and reduced household hunger and several other indicators. Basically, you integrate child education for infant and young child feeding and other related practices along with the agricultural extension messages. This was LANSA that you are aware of, also showing improvement in the dietary diversity before and after intervention. This was in the Koraput province in Varda. This is Lao PDR over a 3-year period where again integrated home gardening where we found, and there are lots of examples, so you may be aware of this, but from baseline 23.2 till the end of project intervention, it had reduced to, almost you can say the moderate and severe malnutrition, 15.9 and 2.3. So this was an impressive reduction. But I just want to tell you about Thailand. This is an important example, and I think many of you are aware, where the community-based program for health promotion was, while it was led by the health sector, it was in the agriculture sector played a critical role, and together as a hand-in-glove approach, they worked together, where there were some basic minimum services, as they called it, from each of the sectors, agriculture, health, and education. And this, I think, is known to all of you, but I just want to reiterate this. This was backed by a supportive system where they had training, funding, problem-solving supervision. And at the interface, you had the service providers. Basically, the message was to link service delivery with the institutional arrangements, or to link the community-based approach with the service delivery programs. And at the community level, you had the farmer leaders, you have individual mobilizers at the ratio of one volunteer or one mobilizer for every 10 households in a cluster of households in the village. Now, this is not so simple. It worked in Thailand. It doesn't always work everywhere else. But the focus is one-to-one counseling and trying to monitor it in the community. And several incentives were given to the volunteers. And how could they try to sensitize, motivate households to not only improve their diet, but also have local integrated farming approaches so that they could have household food security. Now, this model worked over there. I think it also works in Vietnam. In the case of India, in the case of states, depending on the situation, I think this approach of integrated farming, while it is there, I think we need to strengthen it at the individual level. There are other ways in which we can have access to the foods that consumption can be enhanced. There was an impressive menu of activities, and this is where you need to also look at the antenatal care, growth monitoring promotion, food production, nutrition education, sanitation and safety, and other related activities. These were the menu of activities which was guiding factor, and there were minimum basic needs indicators which the community was monitoring. So this was the classical example of a community-based approach which helped to reduce malnutrition over a 10-year period, and this was very, very impressive. This is the summarization of all the countries, and I'm just showing this to you. I think this model of collaboration, when it is linked to existing government structures, helps in a sustainable approach. Supportive leadership from district, sub-district, with linking with agriculture and health entry points, linkages between GO and NGOs. Now, across the world, we have the Scaling Up Nutrition Movement, the UN Food System Summit, which is currently active, policy uptake. I think we need to give a feedback to the policy, empowerment of women farmers, and then roll this out through farmer field schools, women farmer leaders, in order to scale up the approach. Challenges, it's not always so simple to ensure best practices for scale up. Strengthening effective communication, vertical coordination is often what we have, but between, it's not always that simple. Motivation of farmers, transferring skills, sustained access to quality production inputs, and remote hard to reach areas again are often a challenge. Messages work simultaneously on policy capacity strengthening, policy coherence between the sectors, working with the entire system. Impact comes from synergies, we are aware of that, and also monitoring the dietary and nutrition outcomes. It is fundamental, not easy. It requires investments. Public sector can create an enabling environment. And today I say this because across the world with urbanization, we need to sensitize the private sector to not only produce food, but they should produce nutritious food. And the public sector can create the enabling environment and generate incentives. In many countries, incentives are given to the farmers and to people who are selling brown rice, multigrain rice, where, sugar reduction, these are taxes are given. So these are things that we need to look at. Informed consumers, so dietary guidelines to be promoted and strengthen the enabling environment for nutrition-oriented programming and adapting international guidelines to national policies. And thank you for your attention, and I am happy now to discuss.
Thank you very much. Just information to share. You handed over the plate which you developed for Bangladesh.
Yes.
And carefully I brought it to manage, and I handed over to Dr. Vinita, who is present here. She's heading our Gender Nutrition Center. Dr. Vinita Kumari is here.
First of all, thank you so much, ma'am, for your impressive session. Since I am also working on nutrition sensitive agriculture, looking forward for this exciting session. It was very interesting. Food plate, yes, we have received that food plate from Bangladesh here, and we have got some idea that yes, something that educational material can be developed for education. We have also worked with FAO India on nutrition sensitive agriculture between 2021, and we have developed 2 sets of modules for capacity building. So we are doing the capacity building on that. I have 1 or 2 questions from you regarding one from the food plate itself. You had shown us the food plate for pregnant women. So is that a food plate for pregnant women different, and the general people, is it different? This is my first question. Because
very good.
CMR NIN guideline says half of the plate should be filled with fruits and vegetables, 1/4 with cereals and other carbohydrate based foods, and remaining 1/4 with protein, animal protein, plant protein, and including dairy products. But in this food plate, half is filled with cereals. So I just want to have clarification on that.
Very good question. It is an important point, and you're absolutely right. The plate needs to be updated. This plate was produced sometime in 2015. When, basically the plate is not just produced, as you know. We use the desirable dietary pattern of countries. We also look at the recommended dietary allowances, and you look at what is the energy requirement of that particular age group. Now, this was a standard plate for an average woman, okay? She was not pregnant, just an average woman, using the dietary guidelines. Now, for Bangladesh, when we were calculating the desirable dietary pattern, because you look at production, you look at consumption, and then you have to have a reasonable target. We can't jump to 1/4, okay? Ideally, yes. Now, the current Lancet series or the current food plate we are saying is 1/4 cereals, okay? Now, in a country where more than 60% or 70% of the energy is coming from cereals, especially when you have heavy workers and, the average population, at that time, the desirable dietary pattern showed 55% of the energy was from cereals when we did based on the guidelines for the country. So at that time, and people were taking more than 3/4. So we said to reduce it, to bring down the target, to improve it, at least just have half the plate with rice. Now you might tell me, oh, but how do you decide half? This was based on the evidence, based on the desirable dietary pattern, and the recommendation that was being given based on the FAO guidelines, okay? It was not just done off the cuff. Now, in a country where vegetables, lentils, very little leafy vegetable is being taken, and based on the nutrient targets and the food targets of all the food groups, the amount, we say 400 grams of vegetables and fruits, but in reality, to reach that target, it takes a little time. So you need to have a realistic target. So we said from the remaining, and this was done based on calculations with evidence using the dietary guidelines. Again, I want to harp on the dietary guidelines. And then this plate came up and we said minimum 5 groups. Now, when people looked at the plate, they said, oh my gosh, I don't think I can eat all this every day, because in reality, they're not eating. But this was done as an educational tool, and then you further taper it down. Now, this plate needs to be updated. For women who are pregnant, yes, we have to suggest an extra egg. We will have to suggest other foods, and the messages are given. In that plate, it is not given because this was a standard plate for a woman. So I would say now, and I know discussions are being held with people who are working on this plate in India. I know NIN is looking at it. I think the approach would be to reduce the proportion of cereals further. 1/4 is what is currently being recommended, but bring it down. We have to do an entire survey and we have to do calculations on the production and consumption situation. And we'll have to do it across large population. And then give a realistic target and keep a certain timeline by which you can reach it. And then, yes, I agree with you. We will have to give at least out of the 10 groups, at least 5. And we can reduce it. You are absolutely correct. The problem, as we see, and you will agree with me as a nutritionist, protein consumption is often found to be low. So the combination of cereals and lentils. Again, under cereals, we focus more on the complex cereals. Here it is supposed to be parboiled rice, okay, in the plate. So I wouldn't say that the plate is a misleading one or it is wrong. It has to be updated. But this was an important step at that time. Now, we are already in 2023 and there is newer knowledge today. So we must use these newer guidelines in developing our plates. Well, I think the work from Swaminathan Foundation is quite impressive. You can see they have been doing a lot of work through their LANSA. But I think they had these Nutri villages and millets which were being promoted. They had regular training and part of biodiversity in terms of promoting underutilized foods. Then under the indigenous food systems work, we had looked at the food systems of the Bhil population in Gujarat, and Salomi Yesudas, who's there, had looked at the Dalit in Andhra Pradesh, where an impressive array of traditional foods were there in the food system, but in terms of consumption, it was not adequate. So I think there are dime a dozen examples. These were the 2 examples that we took from India, from Swaminathan Foundation, and the ones from the indigenous foods in Gujarat and in Andhra Pradesh. You can look at, and I'm sure Dr. Chandra would have some comments on it in terms of having, how do we integrate this into our programmatic framework so that at least we monitor it in a rapid manner and see that we are able to impact the dietary consumption of the community whom we are intervening.
Annapurna model promoted by Dr. Swaminathan Foundation.
Yes.
It is very user friendly. If you have a little place in the backyard, we can grow vegetables on rotation, which can safeguard our nutrition sensitive issues. But I would like to highlight one of the major challenge actually. See, we have plenty of knowledge, technologies generated by reputed organizations and scientific institutions. International experiences are very much, models are available. But who will communicate to the people? That is a big missing link. Nutrition sensitive agriculture is not part of the job chart of extension worker. It talks about fertilizer, it talks about water management, but he stops where he is supposed to advise farmers what to eat, what not to eat. I think we have to fill this gap apart from technology generation. We did little work. I think it has to be on a massive campaign mode.
Excellent, Dr. Chandra. Thank you. You've summarized this possibly. I did not reiterate it so much, but absolutely you are right. And as you say, we need to integrate nutrition across the board in terms of all the sectors. And it's often as a lip service, it's not so simple. And while you've talked about the Annapurna model in terms of production diversity, yes, with the limited land, I think it doesn't always translate into consumption. I know a poor woman farmer would be interested in selling the excess and getting money for the household, which is true. And here we talk about the women's empowerment and how knowledge for women can be helpful. But I think every mother would keep some food for the household and then only sell it. But we did notice in one of the projects, by the way, it was a poultry production project, where they would not consume all the eggs, but they would sell it, earn the money, and rather use it for the education of children. These were things that were also seen. So I believe that there has to be a balance. Also, money always doesn't necessarily translate into improved nutrition. Yes, income growth and nutrition are definitely synergistic. They're closely linked. We are aware of that. But we also find that money in the pocket doesn't necessarily translate into good nutrition. So, along with nutrition education, women's empowerment, we need to hammer hard where purchasing of healthy foods, the right kind of food selection and right preparation of foods, which is again important. We didn't talk about those aspects, but I think healthy food preparation should be a core part of your transfer of technologies under food processing in the agriculture sector. I know you have subject matter specialists and extension people, officials who do training in the community. I think the focus on nutrition needs to be strengthened. This is another thing. How do we prepare foods correctly? What are the combinations we have? What are the processing methods by which we can, yes, we need to sell those foods, but also consumption. I think this is where, but this needs to translate and get scaled up. And as Dr. Chandra rightly said, this is the missing link. No, I wouldn't say focus, adequate emphasis and strengthening of nutrition capacities. And nutritionists have to take up this challenge. This is where the role of, I remember those several years ago when home science colleges and nutrition institutions were linked with ICMR, with the medical institutions as well as with agriculture institutions. That model was excellent and it was good work was happening. So I believe some of this needs to be strengthened again. And there's been a lot of change, but if this can be taken to scale, I think a lot would be improved in terms of dietary outcomes.
I am RV Tiwari from Indian Institute of Horticulture Research, Bangalore, principal scientist. The diet diversity requires more production of fruits and vegetables. But our extension specialists, they are not trained about the market linkage, as they know the things to be produced and that to produce in the form of the cereals, grains, etc. So this particular aspect of, because a brinjal on the plant, it requires immediate attention. Either it should be consumed or it should be linked to the market. We in the India, I worked for 30 years in the post-harvest technology division at IHR, and even now also we call that food processing is 2.2%. So we miss completely on the understanding of the value chain system, packaging system, total enabling support system, number one. And the second, working in the ICR system, we never gone to the schools anytime or even have taken a project that to talk to the children, parent teachers meeting, that how the children should be trained for consuming more fruits and vegetables. Who should take this initiative? Because agriculture was never thought in the past as a source of nutrition. Nutrition department was in the women and child welfare, and we have a Anganwadi system in India. So when I am looking on this entire aspect, and I am very closely associated with the manager also, so how we can break this, what is happening so far?
The answers are not that simple, but I will give you some lessons what have been learned from other countries. And I know India has also done, it's not as if they haven't done some, I think it was in the early 2000s, we had worked with the villages in Tamil Nadu. Dharmapuri was the village I remember, where the home garden was linked, but it was not with schools. But coming to schools, I know that, children are given a kind of a snack, or they are given hot cooked meal in many states. It's being given, and all this is excellent, khichdi, which is being given, but adding vegetables and in some cases a boiled egg, it's not, the cost is an important factor, I know. But if the parents, teacher associations are linked with the community and the school, may very often, and I'll give you the example of Thailand over here, where parents played a role in contributing to preparing the foods along with as part of their duties, voluntary duties. Now, it's not so simple. It has to be worked out, and institutional arrangement has to be worked out. And the children were growing these vegetables in the garden of the school in places where there was land available, small limited land. And there are models for school gardens and all that. That the technology is available, the knowledge is available. And these children, as part of their science lessons and practical learning, were using the produce for their meals in the school. And teachers were being trained, and the senior class students, especially adolescent girls, because that is where you have these deficiencies. Those children who were very poor were coming without proper breakfast to school. They were using it, and leafy vegetable in which egg is added and make an omelette, or you can have it along with lentils and make a khichdi with leafy vegetable. So some of these experiences have shown that over time, those children were sensitized to eating it. And I think the best method would be to undertake a school nutrition project with an agricultural project. You have to integrate it. And we can work out the logistics cost. I don't think these are very expensive. Even in Laos, this was done. And we have the figures for some of these, how much would they cost where you can grow kangkong and all. But consume this at the school level along with this parent-teacher association. The challenge often is who will look after the garden when the school is closed. So I think the local community, the local groups have to be engaged. And I know it's not so simple, but there have been models which have been used. And I don't think it is so difficult for, in India where we have so much of knowledge and so much of development has happened. I think this can be tried out, and it has been tried out. But the main message to what you're saying is we must undertake school nutrition projects as part of our agricultural extension. Link it up. It's not just for the women and for the household. And all those recommendations, while they're all fine on paper, translating them is the challenge. And I think it's being done. Smaller countries have had examples. Similarly, we had another thing from FAO on 1 cup of milk for every Asian child. So I think there are ways in which this can be done, and we can talk about it, and we have to scale it up. It's not just the pilot projects that we talk about. It has to be taken to scale.
On nutrition sensitive agriculture. In Orissa, through living farms, the indigenous food systems, the forest foods, we tried with the children. WHH has funded that, and it is the report is available on website also. From their website, or just if you Google forest as a food habitat, you will find the book. And secondly, as you know, as part of our global health case studies, ma'am, we also worked with the consumer education, organizing locally, each village or each cluster, mandal, like that, district or like that. We organized consumer education action group.
Many of these successes which have been done, I think these have to be scaled up. And this is where the challenge, I put it under the challenges. We need to be seriously having an explicit integration of nutrition into our agricultural programs. And we have different models, training, capacity building, transfer of technology, integrating nutrition education using scientific evidence and the guidelines, not just as, lip service, and translate this into actual small activities. About market linkages, today the world has changed. We have foods on the shelf, a lot of processed foods, our own traditional foods which are missing. There has to be the kind of foods. How do we influence mass media? How do we influence the marketing people and the knowledge of nutrition labeling? I think these are big issues, and we have to work at the policy level to make sure that this is translated across the board. So
thank you, ma'am, for giving us valuable input on nutrition sensitive agriculture, focusing on agriculture, food systems, nutrition and health context, and also present global and food and nutrition situations, challenges in healthy diet, nutrition sensitive food systems, and particularly on nutrition sensitive planning, and nutrition density of foods, dietary diversity, how agriculture can help on healthy diet, millets in dietary plate, community-based program for health promotion also, and agro-diversity policies in different countries, and mostly important quality of food production to plate, food preparation and consumption, and so on. There is so many inputs you had given, madam, particularly on nutrition sensitive agriculture aspects. Thank you so much, ma'am. It's a great opportunity for all of us to listen to you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Hope to see you in Manage someday when you visit India. Please visit Manage. And it is a very interesting talk. Eating is not just eating. We have to think and eat. Great message. Thank you very much.